Okay, so we're picking up following the path of authentication requests, and this is where we're back. We're still on our VPN server, on Windows Server 2019 with RRAS, and in the video before this one, we looked at the RRAS settings and then the network policy server settings, which is looking here, and then next we want to look at the dual authentication proxy settings and certify the web client. Okay. So the settings in routing remote access took us in here. We've already talked about that. From here, the request leaves and it goes to the Duo Authentication Proxy service. Now it is a service. Here it is. It has a very much a Windows, excuse me, a Linux look and feel kind of like to it, meaning that there's no graphical interface. It has a configuration file and it has a running service. So the configuration file that for our sample here is going to look like this. Okay, and I'll walk through that file with you. Whenever you make a change to this file, you need to come in and you need to restart this service. So the service reads the file and implements it, but then it doesn't continue to read the file. It runs with it until the service restarts. Now, if you make an error in the configuration file, the service will start and then immediately stop. So that's a good troubleshooting tool. And you can see it here if you don't have the restart option, like if you click start and then you come back in, you can click start again, or you can come to server manager, and if you see a service has failed, if you refresh it and a service has failed, that means you've got an error in your configuration file. Okay, so let's look at the configuration file. Now again, big picture. Big picture, a request came into routing remote access. Routing remote access is configured to use radius authentication. That then sent the request to the connection request policy in network policy server. Network policy server then sent the request onto dual dual authentication, and the key part on that, some things are just really important to show. The key part in what makes that happen is this setting right here. Is it when it leaves the network policy server, it uses this radius server group up here, remote radius server group, and that is what is sending the request over to now to the dual authentication proxy. All right, let's take a look at this configuration file. There are two different ways to configure the dual authentication proxy, and I've tried both, and I'm set up here for both, but I'm currently running using the radius option. But let me go through both options with you. So the first thing I want to point out is that these semicolons indicate a remark, meaning that this is not configuration code. This is just information, and you can do that. You can remark or put comments in to help you remember or understand what you're doing. So you see I've got one here, and my comment is either radius underscore client managed by network policy server or Active Directory or AD underscore client, and you can control group membership only. Okay, up here again, just information. All right. Okay, so what's going to happen is this, is that when this is referenced, the request will come into this, but then depending upon whether I have this one active, my Active Directory client, or my Radius client then, which is active right now, notice no semicolon in front of it, will then take me down to here to continue. If I have the Windows client active, it'll then take me down here to continue, and notice I have remarked all of those out. You actually don't have to do that. You can unremark them. I remarked them just to remind myself 6 months from now that they are not active, but you can unremark them and just not use them, and your configuration file will load and it won't have any problems at all. Okay, so that's how this works. So let's walk through it. These first three items up here, these come from when you go into Duo and you say I want to protect Microsoft Routing Remote Access, and it'll send you to some configuration, and it'll give you these three values. Okay, those are our secrets, so you can see I put bogus information in there. This one down here is the heart of it, in that this is where the client will go to actually look for your users. Now I put a bogus value in there, but there'll be a real value in there, and that's a URL. And so this client over port 443 will go out to that address, and it'll look for it'll look for your users, and that's how it knows to contact them. And also you've got a policy out there on that server that defines some criteria. I chose to put most all of my criteria in the Active Directory configuration side of it, but that's what happens there. So those three items come from Duo. Okay, let me clear those off. Okay, we get down here next into radius information, and these are values that are set when you defined that routing remote access should forward to well, through network policy server should forward here, and here you can see the loopback address. If the authentication proxy is not on this box but on a different box, then you put in the appropriate address there. And then the secret, you just pick a secret, or Windows will generate its own, which is really complex. It's a very good secret. I just put this stuff in for demonstration purposes, so you can see I'm using bogus values throughout this here, which is a good practice. I don't Not good to share my actual configurations. Okay, now I had mentioned in an earlier video that this authentication proxy can be used for more than one connection clients, or radius clients. I think you may have to think about that for a minute. But let's say right now routing remote access is using it. But what if I wanted to install OpenVPN on the firewall and have it also use it? Well, then what I would do is I would mirror these. Instead of having a radius, well, in addition to having a radius IP underscore 1 and a secret underscore 1, I'd have a radius IP underscore 2 and a secret underscore 2, and I would define multiple, I'm going to call them clients, multiple different clients that are feeding into my authentication proxy. And that is my goal. My goal is that I could use this for exactly what I said, for OpenVPN running on our pfSense firewall. Okay, now we come down here to the decision point, which I outlined earlier, but here's where it makes an effect. Now I want to talk about the one I'm not using in case you decide to use it, and tell you what the limitations are with it. This is what the Duo website models for you, and this is what the video that I linked also models for you. And it takes you down to here. Okay, it takes you down to these settings, and it's great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this. The reason I didn't do it is because it doesn't give you the control over idle time and maximum connect time, but it does give you control over group membership, and that's what this is right here. You define a group, a global group in Active Directory, and any user you put into that will then be queried here. So when a user goes to connect and you're using the Active Directory client, you can control the decision-making process, yes, no, by if they're a member of that group. Okay, you do need a service account, and the service account doesn't have to have a lot of privileges. It just needs to be able to read Active Directory. And then here you have your distinguished name for, like in my case, I wanted to be able to have users anywhere within Active Directory. So there's two parts of it: the user itself, and then being a member of this group. This group is optional. You don't have to use it. If you don't use it, then all it does is it just queries for, does the user, it'll forward name and password for validation. It does that through LDAP. Okay, I hope that makes sense. All right, now I didn't use that. I didn't use that because of the reasons I mentioned. I wanted more control. So that brings me up to here. Looking now at this part of it, this now, what happens is I go through all of this, okay, and then because I have this one active, it now forwards me down here. And what we're doing here is we're just saying, okay, get the Duo thumbs up, and then continue on by contacting this server, and as your Duo authentication proxy is acting now as a client to this server, and that is my domain controller. That's my DC. That's the IP address of my DC. And as before, we need a secret that's shared between proxy clients and proxy servers. And in this case, I did use the standard port. I didn't see any reason not to, because I don't believe that there'll be multiple clients on that server. I don't believe there will be. And then this one here, it seemed like it gave me more, but I can't really explain to you how much more I got out of that. In different people's their write-ups, they show different add-ons. So this, I would I don't know. I guess I wouldn't consider that optional. I believe that I needed that, but there are some other ones you'll see people use in their sample files, and I tried many of them, and I just whittled it down to this. This is getting me everything I want. Now, before we leave the server, I just want to give you a quick look at the Certify the web client. Okay, this is it. This is what it looks like, and uh, excuse me, this is what it looks like. And there is really good documentation on it. It's in my notes, and as much as possible as I upload these videos to YouTube, I'll include those links in it. This uses the dynamic DNS, or what they call DNS 01 validation. This is a client specifically to run on Windows servers. You set it up, you can test it, which is a good idea. I tested all this before I went ahead and deployed routing remote access. It'll generate a certificate, and it will auto renew the certificate. You can see it counts down and it renews when there's 10 days left. It's good. We're also using the same Certify the web client on our remote desktop gateway server. So it's a way to use a free certificate that's valid, that's real, that's routable or recognizable worldwide, globally on the internet, and have it auto renew. One of the challenges with the Let's Encrypt certificates is they're only good for I think 90 days, and so either every 90 days you're going and updating your certificates, which is a hassle. It's not that makes them not that useful. But if you can use something like what they call the Acme client, or this client, to have that process happen automatically, then it's much better. But again, to do this client requires that you prove that you own this domain, and that's where the Cloudflare part of this comes in. And you'll see this in the web article, which again I have links to, and this is information that's not too hard to find. All right, this video is run long, so I'm going to wrap this up, and we'll move over to the domain controller, and we'll take a look at what's going on the domain controller. Thanks for your patience with these videos.